Hi, I'm Jennifer Woosley Saylor. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor and the kid of a cop. And this is the podcast When the Call Hits Home.
Hey everyone, it's Ashley Gethner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I'm also a child of a police officer.
All right, welcome back. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Ashley.
And as always, we're excited about today's episode. We have two guests, two for the price of one today. And I met one of these guests through this incredible foundation called the Chip Terry Foundation. So we're going to talk some about that. And I made sure everybody knew I'm bringing it up at the top because I want you guys to hear about this great foundation. But why don't we go ahead and just shoot to you guys and tell us a little bit your names and about yourselves.
I'm Hannah Knox. I'm Chip, the foundation. I'm his oldest daughter. I'm a high school, college, and career guidance counselor, and I teach some history and some religion classes. So
I am Michaela. I am number 3 out of the 6 Terry kids, and I am a firefighter, paramedic, as well as a master's level social worker, but I've kind of stepped away from everything to start raising babies. So we're just running the Chip Terry Fund on the side with the help of my mom and my sister. We kind of have taken that on, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, I didn't know that we could have had 4 other guests on the pod, but I appreciate you guys both being here. And Hannah, I'm an oldest, so we'll definitely get to bond about that. Yeah, and you guys both have awesome careers. Especially the guidance counseling and social work as well. So, well, let's just, we're here because we're all kids of first responders. And so I just want to start with what was that experience like for you guys being a kid of a first responder?
I think being the oldest, mine is a little more different than my younger siblings.
Right. Totally can relate.
So the reason we started the Chip Terry Fund is we lost our dad to suicide. He struggled with PTSD after being a career firefighter for almost 30 years. So for me, growing up with dad was different because I got to see dad who he really was.
Wow.
The funny guy, and Mickey, we all got that experience, but the younger siblings, I think, got a lot of more of the PTSD symptoms than I did.
Mm.
So for me, dad was this, he would piggyback me to my bedroom. Maybe not often, but at least that was the memory that I got. In high school, he was my first day. He stood in the entryway of the school in his uniform to pick me up. So yeah, it just a lot of girls would be embarrassed by that. I wasn't. That was my dad. Like that was just who he was to me. And I have a lot of really good memories when I was younger.
Yeah, we kind of discussed that before we came on and how the difference in the version I called him Chip or Chipper. Dad was Chipper to us. Like
Yeah. Old man.
We gave him nicknames. He was always fun, but we were discussing just the perception of him as the years kind of changed him. And as the PTSD progressed, and none of us knew he had PTSD. It wasn't really a thing. He died in 2017. He retired from the fire department in 2012. So it was things that we noticed and things that we see now. It's screaming all the signs, but in 2017 it wasn't a huge deal and not talked about it in the first responder world. As a veteran, it was talked about frequently. We talk about PTSD a lot, but in the first responder world, it wasn't super out there yet. So now we talk about it and we look back. Like we have our younger brother Eli was just the goofy, quirky little kid, and he would always spill his milk at the dinner table, is what we perceived. Eli spilled his milk all the time. We always joked that he was the klutzy kid. But my mom made the comment recently, within the last couple of years or so, like, well, I don't think it was Eli spilling his milk more frequently than any of you did. Anytime one of us had a cup, we would spill it. But my dad's reaction to Eli spilling the cup is what we remembered. And so that's a huge example that my mom uses when she teaches her classes, from a widow's perspective, that, all of us kids had a different version of Chip essentially. And the youngest 2 are adopted from Haiti. So their perception, even they have their own stuff because they were adopted and they're from, a third world country and trauma. On top of that, a dad who has completed suicide and a different version of Chip because they were adopted in 2011 was the process was started.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
right. At retirement.
That was, right at retirement. So we had a lot of different moving pieces in the house, and she was away at school and coming home, and I was in high school, and then you had the three younger ones who are all
Right.
have different versions of chips. So
Mhm.
I think the differences are just kind of crazy to
Yeah.
see. You know, I'm kind of an anxious person, and the older two in the family are not at all. Eli and I were very anxious, and we think that maybe that's correlated to being at home with him and some of his symptoms that we picked up. He was anxious, he was on edge, he didn't sleep. So as a kid, you see those things, and it's different from when
Yeah.
she was 5,
Yeah.
Right.
So that's been the biggest thing we've really talked about, are the differences in how our dad was each kid.
He was
And-
he was a great dad. I mean, we all have
Absolutely.
really good memories
Of course.
but it's funny to talk about, like I perceive my Michaela and our other brother, who was also a Marine, Noah, they were the favorites. They were the athletes. They were my other siblings and I are the bookworms. We were and that he lived vicariously through Michaela and Noah with the Marine Corps and their athletic career. Not that he didn't love my other siblings and I, but there was that bond. And then, dad he had to take care of the rest of us. Like he had to protect us. He had to, and that was how he showed his different way of loving us, whereas he could bond with them for athletics. And then for us, he made a joke one year about me we were playing foosball. I'm not super coordinated. And he was like, "Oh, it's okay, Hannah. At least you're the best reader of the house." Like that was just
You have other talents. Yeah.
yeah. So it's just funny to talk with each other and see like, okay, well, what do you remember about that?
I love the tough love consistency we have as first responder children.
Yes.
I love like the humor and
Universal.
things that all of us are like, oh yeah, my dad would say the same thing.
Very universal, I think, which is unique to first responder kids. We were talking about the two with one of the questions you kind of sent ahead, and what were some of the challenges or differences you thought, being a first responder kid, but we didn't know
Right.
at the time until you meet, normal kids.
Right.
I love
No,
that quote, that normal
right.
kid quote.
The normal
Absolutely.
kids, we were the kids who, saw dad whenever dad was home, and you got whatever version showed up. And
Right.
those kids had, dad would be home at 6 o'clock. They would do whatever they did as a family, or if they didn't do anything as a family, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's very different to be a first responder kid.
I feel like I have to highlight how you just said whatever version that was.
Yeah.
I feel like that speaks so much volume, and it's so true for a lot of first responder children. It can look vastly different. And for you guys, right, first off, thank you for being so open and honest with us with everything right away. And it sounds like you guys were able to see a pretty big transition within your dad throughout the years.
Yeah.
Looking back now, definitely more noticeable.
Oh yeah. Well, and I graduated in 2012, so right around the same time that he retired, before I moved off to Washington D.C. for a year, and he and I went out to dinner one night, and we always, growing up, mom and dad I was 22 probably. Mom and dad always made it a point of, there were so many of us, we're going to do date days. So dad would take each one of us individually, mom would take each one of us
That's
individually.
wonderful. Yeah.
And we loved it. That was,
Mhm.
it was just neat to be able to have one-on-one time with our parent. So dad and I went out and we grabbed a beer and had dinner, and we were having a good time. And I don't even remember what was said, but we got into an argument in the middle of the restaurant. And we were living downtown Covington, and we could walk home from the restaurant. And I remember walking home angry at him, and I wouldn't speak to him. And this is a guy who I loved spending time with, and I had really enjoyed those one-on-one times with him. And I hadn't done it in a while because we grow up, we get busy. And I remember walking in the door before him, and I looked at my mom and I said, "He's an asshole. I will never go out to dinner with him again. I don't know what happened to him." And he walked one way, I walked the other, and we didn't speak.
Wow.
And I was 22, living in the house with mom and dad, getting ready, so there was a huge, huge difference. And I think that was really one of the first times for me that I saw that he was not the happy, lovable, funny. He wasn't smiling the way he did when we were growing up. Like there was just that 2012 was a huge year that we saw a big change in him.
Well, and I think, to your point, and Ashlee and I have pointed this out too on the podcast, like when you're little and your parent is a first responder, it's just what it is. There's your parent, you're not thinking in that perspective.
Mhm.
And I can really appreciate you guys sharing this in terms of how trauma changes a parent, but you're in it and it's not recognizable. You
Right.
know, it's only in that reflection being able to say like, oh, wow. And also, I think you bring up an incredible point of, you know, somebody struggling with trauma, it's not just them that's
Mhm.
suffering and struggling. Like it has such an impact on the family. And I think, you know, 22-year-old you, Hannah, was like, this is what it is. Like, you know, he's a jerk.
And I
Yeah.
didn't recognize that until after he died. Like for me, I just thought this guy didn't want to be around me, that he didn't think that I could have my own opinion as an adult. He didn't respect me. So it was that really did change the trajectory of our relationship until he died. I didn't ever do anything one-on-one with him again.
Oh.
Right. And we coined the term through the Chip Terry Fund. My mom kind of uses it as an example, the jackass syndrome. And
Yes.
it's exactly what it is, because Chip's favorite word was always jackass. Somebody cuts you off, jackass. Or Noah, our older brother, or my older brother, he's number 2 out of the 6, would say something, and my dad would be like, "No, quit being a jackass." And so we called it the jackass syndrome. And that's, I think relative to a lot of first responder families. Like you come home and you don't know what mom or dad just did that day. You don't know if they just, saw the worst thing they can see, whatever it is for the day. And they come home and they're grumpy, and you're a kid. You're like, well, dad's just being a jerk or a jackass, whatever.
Right. And it's hard to like have that information. And
Mhm.
again, at 22, technically our brains are still not developed
Right.
yet to have all that information to filter. And again, we can sometimes take that really personal.
Right.
A parent's had a bad day and is, you know, being a jackass when
Mhm.
really, again, like we can make that, oh, they don't like me, or
Mhm.
I need to do something to make it better, instead of like the reality of what that day is, what those experiences are for our first responder parents.
I do feel like those assumptions when you're a kid is what leads to so much, or not like you in your case, 22, right? I can relate very heavily with this of having some headbutts with my dad and feeling that way, right? Of being like, oh my gosh, he's just a jerk. But unfortunately, it just leaves you to assume all these things. And that's when the relationship really does deteriorate. Is if you don't come back and you don't talk about it. And we all know that a lot of first responders are not good at that, right? It's not a core strength sometimes. But I think that also my brain, like my clinician brain, so goes down this path too of like how sad it is that anger, and you guys can all back me up. All of us have a little bit of this background, right? That like anger and irritability is usually one of the first signs that I see with a first responder struggling with PTSD.
Yes.
Right. And I always say I present on this topic, but I always say like we all know, and I see everybody's eyes in the room when I present. We all know that guy who's just kind of an asshole, like you guys are saying, like that jackass. I'm like, unfortunately, I don't think they want to be. Most people, maybe we got 1% who just want to be, right? But like they don't want to be. It is the PTSD, it is the anxiety, the depression that kicks in. And that's unfortunately that big symptom that we do see. But I can't even, it is incredible to hear you guys speak about this and our listeners, hopefully too, right? Like, because there's a ton of first responders right now who struggle with that. So irritable with their families, and they have to reflect on it and where that comes from. So I appreciate that so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could see it grow as we were kids. The irritability was there, but it was, he was sleepy because, he was in Covington. We're Covington, Kentucky. So that's a busy department.
It is.
And he was a paramedic, and he went through all the ranks, and he was busy. So he would come home, and none of us went to preschool except for maybe Eli. So we were all home. My mom was working full time. They had a good setup. If he was home, she was at work, and vice versa. So you would see him come home, and he'd turn on a little Disney movie for us, and he'd fall asleep, or we'd be playing with our little dolls or Legos or whatever, and he'd fall asleep. And so I feel like it started out as that, and then it grew to irritability when he couldn't sleep, and the drinking, and we just saw a lot of things, stack up, and it's very different to see the symptoms grow, like we discussed earlier. So the irritability was masking, all the other things, the inability to sleep and the nightmares and what he called his demons and all of those things. So it's first responder kids, you put up with a lot, and
Yeah.
you don't realize you're putting up with it, and they're trying to do their best. But
Of course.
now that it's great that we have the resources we have now in a lot of, parts of the country. Kentucky's, really, I think, one of the leading places, surprisingly, for PTSD and and firefighters.
Yeah.
We have a bill from the Fire Commission that will pay for all mental health services related to job related PTSD for firefighters only.
That's incredible.
So we've really made a huge push since Chip died to do that. And it's been awesome as the first responder kid who, has all these great memories of their dad. And, as the things deteriorate, so other families don't have to, go through what we've been through.
So since we're talking about that, can you talk a little bit more about the foundation? Because this is a good time to kind of share more about that.
Yeah. So we started in 2018. Mom sat down at the dinner table one day and said, "Hey, I've been doing some research. Do you guys want to help me with a project?" And she really thought it would be kind of a one and done. We're going to talk about PTSD to the Covington firefighters, and then that's it. I've done my part. And it has grown significantly. So she does educational seminars across the country. She talks to first responders. She talks to administration. She talks to spouses. I think that's probably one of the more unique things, is she'll go and sit and talk to first responder spouses and say, "Here's what I saw. Here's what I missed. Here are the symptoms and the signs of PTSD in your loved one." And then so the educational piece is large. And then we help. And I'll let you talk about this, a little bit more about.
Great. So the educational piece is, one aspect, but we provide services for financial resources and services for the first responders. So in Kentucky, like I mentioned, the Fire Commission will reimburse any expenses for PTSD related, job related stressors for the firefighters. So that's kind of how we started it. We would send somebody to therapy, and then we would pay the bill for the therapy. And it's grown exponentially. I mean, we've got somebody right now we're helping from California,
Oh, wow.
Massachusetts, Tennessee. I've got a whole list, Georgia. It's all over the place. So what we are doing right now, we'll pay for therapy services for the individual. Usually we give a limit if they're not Kentucky Fire, because of the reimbursement rates and stuff. We can't pay for everybody.
Yeah.
So we'll do 5 or 8 sessions if that individual needs it. But the big thing we're trying to do right now is the stellate ganglia blocks. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. The VA did some research on it a couple of years ago, and I think Dakota Meyer he was in the military. I think he was Purple Heart recipient. And
From Kentucky.
yes, and he got a 60-minute episode, and he talked about the stellate ganglia blocks. And essentially, it's a shot in. I'm gonna get it wrong, so I'm not even gonna say what C4, C5, somewhere in there. But it's supposed to reduce the PTSD symptoms, basically like reset it is how we explain it. You're kind of turning off the light switch and resetting it, and turn down your sympathetic system and calm you down. And I've gotten one myself. We have done, I don't have the numbers right off my head. I think we did 100 and something. I don't have it pulled up, but
That's okay.
we did over 100 blocks just this past year. We spent almost $170,000 on services last year, and we helped 182 first responders.
Oh, that's awesome.
in the year of
Incredible.
2024. So we've grown exponentially. The first year it started with taking one guy up to the Center of Excellence. He was a Covington guy, and he was suicidal, and my mom got on a plane with him and flew him to the Center of Excellence in Maryland, which is a center for firefighters only who are struggling with PTSD and I believe substance use. So that's kind of where it started. And we started with one, and then we kind of picked up and had 10, and then it was 25. And then the year after that, it was 100.
Yeah.
So we have grown since 2018 exponentially. And so that's essentially what we're doing. And it's been a wild ride, but it is so rewarding for, I think, my mom, and therapeutic for all of us to see, to see the change that we've had in so many first responders.
Suicide, when somebody commits suicide, at least for me, the anger piece was the hardest to understand. I was angry at everybody, but I was really angry at Dad. Why would you do this to us? Why would you leave us? Why would you leave Mom? And as the oldest, they were gone in the Marine Corps, the two middle ones. So it was me and Mom, and then my youngest siblings, and helping take care of? How do we figure out how to go through all of this? I had a 4-month-old at the time. So
Oh my
I've got all of
goodness.
this stress at home on top of dad leaving. And I really was angry at him. And I think starting this foundation and doing the research and realizing the man who committed suicide was not the man that I grew up with.
Wow.
His brain was totally different by the time he died. He had an injury that could have been helped,
Mm.
and the medical system failed him here. He asked for help. He went in July of 2017 and he went and asked for help, said, I am a first responder. I've been doing a lot of research. And that was something dad was really good at. My dad did a lot. Yes, he learned. He liked to learn. And he went to the doctors and said, I have PTSD. And instead of getting him help with someone who specialized in PTSD, they sent him to a counselor for addiction and put him
Oh
on
my
medicine because
goodness.
they said it called him an alcoholic. Those are all symptoms of PTSD. So he went to an addiction counselor. Intense. It was 3 days a week for what, like
It was an
3 months?
IOP. So he was
Okay.
in IOP, and he did it for
It was 3 months.
and so he completed the IOP.
They
and
handed him a card and said, this person specializes in PTSD. It might take you 6 to 8 weeks to get it. Why wasn't that given to him at the beginning?
Right.
Right.
Not at the end. And then we lost him 2 weeks later.
Wow.
So
Oh my goodness.
for us, the anger, well, again, for
It
me,
was all of us. We all
us.
had. I mean, everybody who loses somebody to suicide, there's always got to be anger.
But I think through the foundation, through what we have learned about PTSD and the brain and the trauma, that has helped us cope. I'm not angry anymore. I understand that dad is not, that wasn't him. That the guy that I loved growing up, the guy that stood in front of the school in his uniform waiting for me as a tiny little freshman, that was the guy. That was Chip,
Yeah.
not the guy who took his own life.
So it's been amazing.
Yeah.
It sucks, and grief, doesn't just go away. Every September, we all go up to the grave and have our beer at the gravesite with them, and we
I love
celebrate.
that.
It's what we did. We probably drink too much as a big Catholic family from Northern Kentucky, and it is what it is. It's just how we remember him, and we're going on 8 years later, and that's still something we love to do, and we're happy now. It's not like we go to the grave and it's sad and depressed. I mean, it's sad and depressing in a certain way, but we all have kids, and we're growing, and it's amazing to see how well we're doing even after some of the adversities we faced. It's wonderful, honestly. I mean,
it's part of his legacy. Like mom always talks about how he would have admitted that he made a mistake. He wrote a suicide note, and she reads his suicide letter at almost every one of her educational seminars.
Wow.
And at the end, one of the quotes is, mental health is just as terminal as cancer. And she always says to all of the first responders, he would have said he was wrong. He would have said that there is treatment, that there is help, knowing what we know today.
Yeah.
So this is our legacy of him.
Well, and what a beautiful way to honor him, right? Like it sounds like you guys are all doing exactly what he probably would have wanted with this too, which is incredible and beautiful. And I think you guys do it in such a humble way. And there's all these different things that you're talking about that, as a child of a first responder, but also as a clinician, my brain is like, yeah, right. Like we have to advocate for culturally competent, like first responder therapists.
Right.
And we have to advocate for people to take a second to look at everybody individually instead of just identifying one thing and sending them off, right? Like there is such flaws in these systems that we need to fix. And I know, and I think Jennifer's on this with me. So Jennifer, chime in. Like, I know that that's like a huge passion of mine is how do we get more therapists, more mental health workers to tap into this field and to specialize in it and to help with it because it's needed, right? And if people don't understand it, sometimes we're doing more harm to that first responder that goes to see them than we are any good.
We had a lot of first responders at the beginning tell us they wouldn't go to therapy because they had been, and the therapist didn't help them. It actually made things worse. And we have vetted, Mick and mom have vetted the therapist to make sure, and we have a list of people that we trust for the foundation.
And that's really that building trust is so important. I mean, you can take all the classes and be, competent, but you have to gain the trust of any client, but especially a first responder because they're used to responding to the crisis. They're not in a place to always say, like, let me be vulnerable and the one that's getting the help for sure.
Yeah.
I also just want to say, you guys are such, I mean, gold star kids of a first responder. You know, here's this awful situation, and you guys take that and save 182, correct? 182
Just this year, past year.
people in 1 year. I mean, I think that that is so a first responder kid's superpower, is to take something that's extremely hard. And, you know, I just appreciate you both being so honest and raw about, I was angry at my dad. And the fact that you guys had the ability to work through that and say that wasn't my dad. And so
Mhm.
somebody else has that anger. I love my dad, is incredible. And I do know that your mom does great work. I get, you know, conferences she's going to be at, emails and things like that. And actually, when Michaela and I were talking about, like, hey, would you come on the podcast? She's like, yeah, my mom. And I was like, well, I know your mom's amazing, but you're the kid. Like, so I'm glad to get, you know, a kid's perspective and the impact of that,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, it's I think been a passion, and we've always thrown out ideas with the nonprofit of like, how do we, you know, our mission says our first responders and their families, and being the kids, we're very passionate about, you know, there's a lot of kids. I mean, we have
I taught
just
one last
yeah,
year.
just in our area, we've had probably one or two suicides of firefighters, and one who we lost as well that we've helped. His wasn't suicide, but all of us are firefighter kids, and they're younger, and we're, you know, we're the and trauma will affect you differently, obviously, based on your age. You know, most of us, the six kids, were, you know, 18 and up when he died, but and a lot of, you know, the kids that we were talking about, they're
Younger.
high schoolers and younger, and
Oh.
you know, a 6-year-old, and they're losing their parents. So we've always talked about, you know, wanting to be there for the kids. And my mom's the, you know, the spouse lady. You know,
Yeah.
she's the spouse, and she's the, you know, we call her she can talk. She's like the frat mom to some of the
I love this.
She called herself the frat mom, and
And then one of the firefighters called her, he said, no, you're not the frat mom, you're the god mom.
the godmother. And
Oh.
so, you know, she gets that perspective, and we love to just be here if any kid needs it.
Yeah.
You know, she's had contact with a kid who lost his mom to suicide, and it was good for him to want to reach out to Hannah. I was like, that's amazing. He knows about us. He did some fundraising for us. We helped his mom, and unfortunately, we didn't get the right help. You know, she didn't, you know, find what worked for her. And so we
Right.
lost her to suicide. And
this is a kid who was angry. He was really angry
Understandably. Yeah.
and didn't, yeah, exactly. But I taught him last year at school, actually, and he didn't know who I was, but I knew who he was.
Yeah.
So he was having a really bad day, and our guidance counselor pulled him in and said, hey, why don't you just talk to Miss Knox? And I kind of explained, and I said, do you know who Joe Terry is? And he said, yeah, he helped mom. And I said, well, I'm her daughter. And his whole face just fell, and he sobbed, and he was able to come and talk to me. So after that, we just had this bond. And I know Michaela and we talk about it all the time. How can we help these other kids? Because we've had the ability to process, and we were older. I was 27 when dad died.
I think I was 22 or 23. So
Yeah.
you
So
know, the little ones were, you know, 18, and
yeah,
Tiny was probably
7,
6.
she was 16.
She was younger than that. But so different span. And once again, that just shows as first responder kids
Right.
how the youngest perceives the loss of Chip to the oldest perceiving the loss of Chip. We have a lot of, you know, resources and a lot of ways to help, and we're always open to. So if there's anybody that you guys come in contact with that's got a kid that just needs to talk, then we're always available. I mean, that's something that we have a passion for, and we want to do what we can.
Well, I love that, because
Well-
I get that a lot. I get that a lot for children. And that's why we did this too, right? So
Yeah.
I love that very much.
Yeah.
Jennifer, go ahead with your question, because I was going to kind of go into the fundraising part just because we were on it. But if you are not there yet, you go ahead with your question first.
No, I was just thinking how powerful and magical that we're all here together as first responder kids, thinking about first responder kids. That's all. I just got goosebumps. So
I
go
know.
ahead, Ashlee.
No, same. I can always read, like, every time we do these episodes, I feel the same. I get so motivated right? I
Mhm.
get so motivated for the work that we're all doing. And then to meet
Yeah.
incredible people like you, like it's just an honor. And I heard you say, like there's fundraising. I know we have a QR code, but what does that look like for people who are listening today that are like, you know what, I want to donate or I want to help or I want to get more involved with this foundation? What can they do?
So we are run solely on donations.
Okay.
There are no grants. I've looked, we've had professionals look for us. There's nothing that we qualify for.
Because we're not veteran focused.
The veteran population, clearly that, we're not there with first responders yet. And mental health, it goes, right, we're not there yet. I see you thinking over there.
I
like
know.
it.
Don't,
I like
I'm
it.
a go-getter like that. I will be like, oh, I see a barrier. I'm gonna go break
Right,
it.
let's
now.
go, let's go. We've been
Let's
trying
go.
and we cannot find it. And so we are still trying, and I haven't given up on the grants, but we are run on donations. We do, one or two big fundraisers ourselves. Some people throw golf outings for us. We do get some, we have some income through the fire commission in Kentucky.
And our mom speaking engagements, when she
Yeah.
goes, usually we do, it's a small fee because we don't want to make it so that she can't go and talk because somebody
Right.
can't afford to bring her in with. So she does make some off of her speaking engagements.
For the nonprofit.
Yes.
I mean, she and I have just recently started taking a small portion of a salary, not even, that's less than a quarter of what we make, not even a quarter. So it's donations.
Mhm.
And so we've had people just run random things and send us checks, or people can donate through the website, which the QR code that we gave you is linked to the website. It's really whatever anybody's willing to donate,
Yeah.
word of mouth. If somebody, Ashlee, I think you're in Wisconsin, is that right?
Yep.
You've got a department that wants to have my mom come in and speak about PTSD from the widow's perspective, and they're willing to pay a couple $100 for her to come talk.
Yep.
Then so be it. So she'll come on. She's been to Wisconsin actually once or twice already.
Oh,
So
okay.
she's been all over the place. She'll teach
Okay.
wherever anybody will take her, and she wants this to spread, and we need money because we are getting request upon request. I run the emails and we probably get 10 a week.
Wow.
He gets phone calls. There are times where there have been 3 instances where she has been on the phone with a firefighter with a gun and has talked them off the ledge and gotten them to an
Oh my
emergency.
goodness.
Figured out. So, she answers the phone nonstop. So we're busy. I'm
Yeah.
not as busy as they
You are.
but
Well, you're working full time,
I work
so-
full time, but it just
Whatever anybody's willing to
Yes.
do or donate. We've got departments that'll have like a union fundraiser, like Cincinnati's going to do a golf outing for
Yeah.
us, and
Nice.
there's another department out here by us that does a golf outing. I will tell you now, it's basically a text-a-thon that is in May, beginning of May.
Oh, okay.
So we would send out a text message to you, and you can forward it on to 5 people and ask for a donation. It's basically like a pay it forward type thing.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
I'll make sure we get in contact prior to that.
Yeah, you're gonna need my number. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We've got plenty of contacts. I know you have plenty of contacts. Anybody that's willing to donate, because
that one last year we made about 25,000.
about 25,000 last year. Our goal this year, we're shooting for the stars this year. We're shooting for 100,000. I don't know if it'll happen, but our contacts in the last year have grown, so we're
Yeah.
gonna.
And we've helped more
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
what we see is the guys and the women that we've helped then are more willing to help us too.
This is
and
so first responders. They're
You know
always
it.
gonna pay it
That's how we are. We
forward.
can't help it.
even
Yeah.
if it's only like a $50, like some of them, it's just $50 every now and then, or like one guy, it's
Right.
$10 every.
Mhm.
That helps.
That's
So
good.
when she was talking about the blocks, the shots, those are about $500,
They're
600 now, and insurance won't cover them because it's still technically experimental. So that comes out of ours, and if it's Kentucky Firefighter, we can get reimbursed for that. But we've got Ohio guys. Our doc is in Ohio. We got Ohio guys that we want to help, and that comes out of our pocket, and we don't get reimbursed for that. So it's $600. We usually do 2 shots, and that's what we have seen to be working the best is 2 shots with therapy.
Mhm.
So then it's the 2 shots, and then it's 5 or 8 therapy sessions. So
We're spending about $2,400 on a person that's using both resources. And we're open to helping with other things. We haven't really gotten into like a lot of different modalities. There's some of the EEG readings with the brain mapping and stuff like that. We haven't dove into that just with the the
Well, I think
research
you're
behind.
seeing results with what you're doing.
Yeah, we're seeing results with the
Yeah,
blocks,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we have a doctor from she's a UC doc, and she's also on at the VA, and she's a big believer in the blocks. So we're doing some research, and she's going to kind of help us hopefully walk through that. She actually is the founder of, I want to say CPT, one of the founders of CPT, and is really big into treating her first responders and her veterans with that. So we're looking for the most evidence-based treatments, and we will help.
Right.
If it's evidence-based, we're hoping that whatever we can do to help. So we've got a lot of awesome testimonials about the blocks. So that's really been our big push. We'll have the block and then therapy, and they have to contact us through either the website and kind of talk to my mom, and she interviews pretty much every single firefighter we help to make sure that we're giving them the resources that they need. And we're just hoping that we can keep up. So
Yeah.
and once the money's gone, the money's gone. That's what we're trying to keep it moving. We did very well for ourselves last year in turning that profit and continuing to help everybody, but we just need help with funding.
Yeah. Well, and I think you bring up such a great point too, which, I've worked with our military service members and their families, and that's incredible that so much is out there for them related to PTSD. But you're right, like there needs to be more for our first responders and how they serve their communities. And they're such a vital part of that. So
Like when we
yeah.
started doing the research right after Dad died, across the nation, it was suicide rates were higher than line of duty deaths for both first firefighters and police officers. And that
Mhm.
was something you didn't hear about. You don't. So, and I think it really has been since 2018 that people are now more willing to talk about it. But there is still such a stigma.
Especially in our cops.
Yes.
Yes. Those guys are tough nuts to
Wait,
crack.
our hard-headed police officers?
Right?
No.
We have helped a lot of firefighters and
Yeah.
a handful of cops, and it is hard, and they carry a firearm. Like, it's understandable. And the military is the same way. We carry firearms every now and then.
Right.
So if you are seen as what they call weak and you can't carry your firearm because you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, then it's your job's on the line. So that stigma in the world of your fathers is way harder to break than it is with the firefighters. But we're always open to help our cops, and
Yeah.
we've got
Well,
some
the fact that
corrections.
you've helped some, I mean, that speaks
Yeah.
volumes,
Yes.
They're
Yes,
not
it
easy.
We have a cop on our board, and
Yeah.
he's got
awesome.
the block, and he's a veteran. He's did SWAT. He was on the dude's been through some tough stuff, and he got one of the blocks. And his wife is a family friend that we grew up with, and we were over there a couple weeks ago for a board meeting, and it's just he'll tell everybody. He tells the guys at work. He's telling everybody, like, look, let's just do it. What's it going to do? Hurt you? Like, it's not going to get any worse. So let's figure this crap out so our wives
Yeah.
don't leave us and our kids have good dads,
Yeah.
So we got a cop on our side. We just need some more.
Maybe we just make it a competition between
Yeah,
police
they'll jump
officers
right
and
on board.
firefighters on who's going to get the most help, and maybe that will motivate them a little bit more. They love a competition.
Yeah.
We do
And
love
it's
a
so
competition.
funny. It is so funny for you guys to say that, because I don't know if it's because I feel the opposite. I feel like I struggle more with my firefighters getting on board with mental health here in Wisconsin than my police.
And
Like,
I think it's just we in our
Perspective.
northern Kentucky region, where tri-state Ohio and Indiana, we have a lot of people knew Chip.
Yes.
So he was an assistant chief when he retired. He was well known in the fire world in this area. So and nobody expected it to be him that committed suicide. Everybody's like, it was a surprise. It was a shock. Some of these guys that are retired from Covington or on at Covington still struggle with the fact that it was him. And it's been to our advantage that he was who he was, because we've got guys that are like, oh yeah, I knew your dad, and he's been gone 8 years almost, and they're like, I knew your dad, and you know what, like, I need some help.
And
So-
I think that was why we started.
Yeah.
We had a guy after Dad's funeral. We had over 400 people show up at the funeral. He was a leader in the community. He worked
Yeah.
with small fire departments to help change their
Training and all that kind of stuff.
even when he retired, we had somebody call him a firefighter's guy. Like, he just was there for the firefighters. So we had a guy after his funeral come up to Mom and say, Chip was my hero. But I know if I don't get help, I will be Chip.
Mhm.
And that was kind of the ball that started
Mhm.
the foundation, was hearing from these other guys who looked up to Dad, I mean, it was a shock through our community. It wasn't just us.
Mhm.
Everybody, I got emails and the comments on Facebook and the everything that the weeks after he died, the months after he died, where nobody could believe it was him because he had his shit together, at least on the
On the
outside.
outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever people want to do to help us, we're game.
take it.
Well, we're gonna promote it. And we gotta,
Right.
I know when the call hits home, I know our little group is always willing to help. We're on, we are so blessed with such great followers and people who
Mhm.
support us. And so I know they're gonna hear this and it's gonna make an impact on them like it is on me and Jennifer right now.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we're open to help anybody
Yeah.
from anywhere. If you have somebody listening from anywhere in the nation, we're willing to help. We've had guys, flying. He was from California, I think was a couple weeks ago, flew in from California, got himself a block, had dinner with my mom. They talked, we helped him get to it's a retreat that we sent him to for suicidal first responders and veterans. And he's feeling good. He went home and he's happy and he's hopefully, wants to repair his marriage, and hopefully they can. And that's what we're seeing. Hopefully marriages that can be repaired. And if they can't be repaired, they can at least be, civil, which is
right.
sometimes, the damage might be too far done and they get the help too late, but that doesn't mean the rest of their life is over. So
100%.
we're always here to help anybody that's listening, and we can reach
Well,
out through the website and we're there for it.
I have to be honest, I did not realize it was so national. Like, that's awesome. I just thought you guys were, Northern Kentucky, Ohio. And so to hear that this is something that you guys are willing to help throughout the country is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's mom. I mean,
Mm.
if to sit and listen to her, she has the ability to connect with people no matter who you are. If you're a spouse, a child, an administrator, she has the ability to sit and just talk to you and say, look, this is what happened. This is real. You can't ignore it, and we're gonna help. How do you need me?
And the big thing I think that helps her with a lot of these individuals, especially the administration and the governmental side, she said, it's not my job as a widow to care for all of these first responders. She said, I'm going to do it because somebody has to, but it's not our job as kids of a first responder who died to be out there helping them. Our government, our administrations should be taking care of their people. And unfortunately they're not, which is why it's an epidemic of suicide in our first responders. So I think she has a very good ability to make people see that this is a big deal. It's not just one or two people that are losing their lives to suicide. There are hundreds of thousands of first responders and in the country who are taking their lives every year, and it's preventable. Suicide is preventable in most cases, and in all cases, I think. And unfortunately, somebody is dropping the ball somewhere to lead to that.
She has the ability to make people feel guilty without you knowing that that's
Getting it done.
It's that mom superpower, right?
She's got enough kids that she practiced on.
Well, another reason why people should have her at their events to let her kind of share. So I appreciate that too. And I'm sure there's places on the website too. If a agency is interested in, having her to reach out to the site. And again, like we said, we will include that in the show notes. It'll be something that we'll be talking about when the episode
QR
comes out.
code too. We'll make sure
it should take you right to the website, and we did it all ourselves, so it's not professionally done. My husband and I are not professionals, so we're working on getting somebody on board.
Looks great.
He did a good job. I'll give that credit to him. So he's done a wonderful job, but we're trying to keep up with it, and we got a lot of plates spinning right now. So
well, and it also speaks, to a mom and pop kind of shop here. You guys are running as a family, but here we are, here we are talking on this platform about an incredible program. So I think whatever you're doing, it's working clearly.
Well, thank you. We're hoping so, and we're hoping that we can continue to help, because we've got more people to probably send you, Jennifer, right? We get calls all the time, and your people from Louisville are popping out of the woodwork recently. So we're gonna get you some more. So hopefully you're not closing off to clients right now.
Not at all. Not at all. They're all welcome for
We
sure.
greatly appreciate the two of you working with our first responders
Oh.
because that is our hardest piece is finding the clinicians. We started with one or two that we knew, that we were confident in, and we grew, and it's like, well, we're running out of people to see our people. So
Yeah.
We need more people.
yeah.
Well, fun fact, you guys, I'm out of Wisconsin, but I am credentialed in Kentucky. So
Oh, there you
look at
go.
that.
Good
Do
to
my
know. I
licensure
will
for
keep that in
Kentucky.
mind. Keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. Jennifer, do you have any other questions for them or anything? I mean,
Just
this
if there was
is incredible.
anything else that you guys wanted to share before we wrap up, you guys have shared so much, but
I don't. I appreciate you having us on. It's been kind of therapeutic. We never get to hang out just
No.
the two of us either. So
Oh, I love this.
this is nice that we get some time to kind of to talk about it, and it's
Yeah.
it's what
I
we're
have to
passionate
say
about.
that I love that you guys were able to like look at these questions and have a conversation because Jennifer and I both like interviewed our siblings. So she has a brother. I have two sisters. So, but that was the first time that I sat down with my sisters and I said, "What was this like for you?"
Mhm.
Right?
I don't
And
know if we've ever done that.
I mean, we have just
Little-
we
not
talk
in
about
depth
things,
like
but
these,
never,
but
yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then it was so like it was so cool to see. And like you guys said, like it was definitely this whole dynamic of like oldest sister. I'm the baby.
Baby of the family. Oh, they're the
that's why
worst.
our relationship works really well, guys, because I'm the oldest, she's
Yeah.
the baby. We already have our roles. So
Yeah. But I just love that this kind of did that for you guys too, and maybe hopefully you guys have conversation with your other siblings too, and
Yeah.
it goes kind of farther than that because it's incredible. It's incredible to talk about and to have each other.
Yeah.
You know?
I can't take credit for this. This was a family therapist that told me long ago this, and I use it all the time, that families are like you're at, for Ashley, a Bears game. It's like going to a football game and you guys are all in different seats. And so what looks like a touchdown to one person's seat, the other person says no, he didn't make it in. And so I think that that's interesting. You guys kind of bring that up, like, well, I was the oldest, and so it was like this for me. And we have younger siblings, but it was totally different for. We all kind of have a different view of the game when we're in a family with siblings. So again, I can't take credit for that, but that's always made a bunch of sense for me, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
I
you
love
guys
it.
reinforcing
I
that.
really like that.
I'm
I
a huge
really do
football
like
fan.
that.
I'm a freak about football. So like all of a sudden I was like locked in. I'm like, this is so true.
I knew if I mentioned the Chicago Bears, you would be paying attention, Ashley.
Always. You pull me back in always with that talk. All right.
Oh.
Well, thank you guys so much. We are honored to have you on here. We will be sharing this everywhere. We want everyone to know about you guys. We want to stay in touch with you guys and keep doing some things. It sounds like I have some barriers to break down with grants. But I would love to finish this off by saying what we always say, and that's just when the call hits home, Jennifer and I are here for you guys, and we just cannot wait for you all to hear this. So thank you guys again for coming on.
Thank
you for
you.
having
We
us.
appreciate it.